Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Late Night Anime. Glad to have you all. And
Yeah,
my name is Bee. This is Todd.
yeah, that's me.
Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, you started with episode 1. If not, it's fine. But
It doesn't matter. It's episodic. There's no
exactly,
cohesion.
kind of honestly, kind of like this series that we watched. But let's see. Starting with seasonals, I think.
You want to start with
Um,
that? Yeah.
yeah, let's just give brief rundown. I
Spy
think.
Family.
Yeah.
That's ending tomorrow.
Oh, is it really? That's the last
Yeah,
episode. Fuck.
yeah. For the first core, they have a second core coming out in like 2 seasons from now, I think. So like
Gotcha. So,
summer, fall season, I think. Yeah.
so all hope is not lost. That's cool though. It's, I
I mean, the
mean,
show's probably popular enough to get a second season for sure, too.
oh, absolutely, no doubt. I mean, it's the only one I've been watching for this
Hmm.
season. It's the only one I've been hearing about too, but I'm also not
Yeah,
exactly
it's
tuned in.
For me, it's the most notable one. The other show I've been watching called Summertime Rendering,
Oh, yep.
which is not legally aired in the US yet. It's going to be on Disney Plus exclusively, and they're waiting until the entire show comes out before that happens. And I'm like, no way, I'm fucking waiting for that.
That's fair
So I've
enough.
been watching that show weekly, fan subbed,
Yeah.
and it's a really good show in a similar vein to like Higurashi When They Cry and Steins Gate.
Uh-huh.
I think it's a bit too shonen. I think I like those other shows more, but it's
Yep.
still like worth the watch and it's really good looking. So
Makes sense. Yeah, there was one I can't even remember the name that I stopped watching after Crunchyroll started doing the you get 3 episodes and then you got to go premium.
when
Um
they merged with Funimation.
yeah, they started that this season.
Yeah.
And so I was like all happy watching Spy Family and I think one other show, and then I couldn't. And then
Yeah, I pay for premium.
Spy Family was the only one I actively tried to keep up with
Mhm.
through uh let's just say sailing the seas.
Yeah.
Um
I pay for premium, so I watch most stuff with the premium membership in mind. But then I mean there's so many shows I watch that you just can't fucking find in general too.
yeah, yeah.
Like I do have a show I actually do want to talk about that I just finished today
All
as
right.
well called it goes by a few different names on websites. It's called Welcome to Irabu's Office. It's
Uh-huh.
also known as like Trapeze and other it has a name in Japanese. Oh, sorry for that. Dude, it's an incredible show. It's another episodic show, just like what we watched Kino's Journey,
Yeah.
and it's about a like psychologist, but he's a fucking weirdo, and it's so
Uh-huh.
heavily stylized. It's done by Toei. It's the same director as I don't think you've seen it, but Mononoke, which is another episodic thing about
Yeah.
like Japanese old stories. It's really cool, and they're both heavily stylized.
Uh-huh. It's
And
cool.
it's Irabu's Office is so weird yet it's so good. I mean, there's so many incredible character moments. It focuses on like one patient per episode through this like
Yeah.
set of days, and you get to see like I don't know. It's just it goes over things like ADHD, a lot of OCD cases,
Uh-huh.
a bunch of other things with like fears and stuff, and the way Irabu tries to help these people and how these people face their own problems, and like a lot of really weird metaphysicalness too, just like spliced in there. Characters' heads will just like switch from animated to live action
What?
or just being animals. It's funky. It's
That
really fun.
that
It's
does sound
really
funky.
colorful.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend it,
All
but that's
right.
not the show we're talking about today.
No,
We're
it's
talking about
not.
Kino's Journey, which is a 2003 show from director Ryutaro Nakamura, who is, I think, probably best known for Kino's Journey. He's also notable. Oh, actually, no, he's best known for Serial Experiments Lane. What am I talking about? Which is another really experimental show,
Yeah.
just liked by many.
I
And
don't
he's
think
also
I don't think
directed.
I've heard of it, honestly, but
Really,
no.
it's a good show. He's also been the director of a Studio Shaft show called Wreck,
Oh, really?
which is also really cool. It's a short show. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Maybe we'll check it out. Um I'm gonna date us and maybe make somebody feel old, but this show is older than us. Um,
That's true. That show
but
aired in
anyway,
like fuck. When is this? Spring 2003.
yeah,
That's that's a while ago.
yeah.
19
Um,
years ago. Jesus Christ.
anyway, um, hopefully that didn't make too many people feel old. But yeah, it was a really cool show though. The
What I
way it
like,
was set up, there's definitely there is a story to it, which is really interesting, but it's
it's
explored. It's not explored chronologically.
yeah. What's like want to cover this Kino's journey is the story of a girl and her talking motorcycle called Hermes.
Hermes, right?
Hermes, yeah. Uh, it's just about their little misadventures as they travel around the world and visit various countries for 3 days at a time.
Which actually, can I talk about? I want to talk about the scale of the countries because it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's like it seems like it's like takes less than a day to get across them, but there's also like, and it was just really interesting to me the just like the general scale and like kind of the in betweenness of things too. Um, but maybe we can
Like
get
the little. Okay, yeah. Do you want to like just some basic thoughts? The show's episodic.
yeah.
Each episode kind of entails visiting one or two countries and maybe the little bits in between and
Uh-huh.
the connections and themes between those countries.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories, the countries themselves tend to represent, philosophies and certain ideas about society
They
and the
they
way people
tend
act in society.
they tend to have a thing.
Yeah,
Like
a little gimmick to them.
yeah. Like there was what was it? There was one that was like all about books, right? The country of books.
Yeah,
Um
country of books, country of this was the OVA, but a country that's just building a massive tower, stuff like that.
uh-huh.
I mean, there's some
Um
other countries. Yeah, there's like the country of working, where people are just constantly working even though they have no need to.
yep.
Stuff like that. And they
There
all symbolize different things that appear in our own society, or it can symbolize a lot to Kino as a character
yeah.
and exploring her and who she is.
And it's a lot of it is more centered. I mean, it's centered around Kino's journey, but not. But it's like I think each place is meant to impart a different message and a different meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's more like a different thing for you as the audience and for Kino to think about.
yeah,
Very much from the perspective of Kino as well. So you get
for
a
sure.
bit of that. And the way Kino reacts to different situations.
Well, and Kino is really interestingly is very neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like
Kino tries to like remain neutral whenever she
exactly.
goes to a
Stay
country and
as
try not
neutral
to
as possible, and
try not to get involved as well,
mhm.
more
And
than she needs to.
I couldn't tell. I don't know if you could, but it seemed like that was like the rule for travelers in every country, where it's or most of them at least, where it's
Hmm.
the rule is you are allowed to observe as long as you do not get involved.
Yeah, it seems like the countries kind of uphold this idea of being like these travelers are like tourists. They're just here to watch.
Hmm.
They're here to learn about our history and then, move on.
Maybe
And I
share
think,
stories, but
yeah, and then Kino's whole ideology as well. Kino doesn't want to stay in a place for more than 3 days,
because then she
and
might get
which,
attached, right?
yeah, it's this idea of not wanting to settle down.
Hmm.
And with both of those things combined, Kina is very much left in a state of being uninvolved
Yeah,
and not
which
wanting to involve herself in
which
fear of being too attached and stuff like that.
yeah, and it's like you can see the struggle of not getting involved sometimes
Hmm.
too, because it's like and depends, and sometimes she's forced to be involved.
Yeah.
Um, it just like what was it? There was one country, it was the Colosseum country, right? Which actually
Oh, the tournament arc.
Yeah, which like spanned 2 episodes, right? Which was the only one that
The
did.
fact that a fucking show about philosophy has a shonen style tournament arc is incredibly hilarious. Yeah, that's a 2 episode spanning arc.
But
Well,
like
yeah.
that was a country where she was forced to get involved because it and because Kino also prioritizes survival. That's
Hmm.
like the other characteristic is neutrality, but survival is
Yeah,
top.
if anybody threatens me, I'll retaliate. Yeah, so
Exactly.
for that arc, it's like Kino shows up to this country, and unbeknownst to her, by entering this country, she is forced into either joining a tournament or becoming a slave. And tournaments are like a big battle,
Yeah.
typically to the death or until the other person surrenders, and then
Right.
moving up into this tournament until you win
Yeah. And it
against
was
all these other travelers who've come in to this country as well.
well, but it was interesting though that like as much as it was like it kind of just seemed like, oh, tournament arc, there was an ideology behind that country, I
Yeah,
think at least.
there was an ideology behind the country in each of the characters as well.
Yeah.
I think there's also definitely a
Um
bit of things,
I mean,
especially with the.
honestly, that I
I,
in my opinion, that the Colosseum had some of the more interesting characters.
I think, well, for that at least, I don't know. I think we explored the characters the most in
Right. That
that
makes
one. In a
yeah.
lot of the other countries, it was more of an exploration of the society as a whole
Yeah.
and individuals in the society, and you don't really get a like pinpoint one person in particular.
Yeah.
It's more of just the way society affects the group and
Un-
the herd.
unless there's like one leader in the society,
Yeah.
which we tend to get a lot of interaction with, such as
Mhm. I mean, the king in the tournament arc.
I mean, yeah, but also like what was it? The woman who ran the like history museum in the country at the
Oh, in the
country of
country
peace.
without war.
Yeah, the country without
Yeah.
war.
Yeah, you
We
got.
you
I mean,
gotta
she was similar to like a leader. She was somebody who decided a major law, and yeah, it was like a tour guide to Kino.
exactly. And like we set the story centered around her perspective a lot for that one, at least in my opinion. Um,
That's true.
yeah, that and that's at least I think so because it was her
Yeah, yeah.
solution to the problem that she perceived. Um,
Yeah, it was kind of her story. I mean, you
yeah,
get a few. Yeah, you get individual people stories. I mean, you have the train workers as well. You
yep,
get their light story and their bit, but a lot of themselves, they represent a philosophy and aren't too much as characters.
yeah. Honestly, I was confused by the train workers
Really?
a little
I,
bit.
I, do you want to get into that now, or do you want to talk about a few things without spoilers that
Let's
are less
yeah.
spoilery? I want to talk about the art,
All right.
the art direction, like the direction in general. What did you think of the art? I thought it
Um.
was like, I thought it was like pretty interesting.
Uh-huh. I
I
thought it
think
was really pretty, honestly.
really, I thought it. I mean, it was this really, at least color wise, very drab
Yeah.
and washed out,
Well,
and it had this effect on like every on just the screen in general.
uh-huh.
These little
Yep.
divots and stuff.
Yep. um
And
s-
like all the character designs themselves were really basic too and simple.
well, it depended though. I mean, like
With I mean, the faces were like very basic,
but
cartoonish shapes.
I think that's part of the brilliance the
Hmm.
um of the like general show design is that I mean, we don't have this personal connection to any of these places or most of these people.
Yeah, and then they get
So
a very
the
simple.
so they get a very simple, very
It's like
crowd. It's like the crowd is
yeah,
one person.
it
Um,
kind of some of the character designs kind of reminded me of like corporate art
kind of.
with
Yeah.
like the shitty Google art where they have
Yeah.
these horribly blocky characters.
Yeah.
that just blend in and represent everybody. It kind of reminded me of that in a way,
Yeah. No, that makes
where
sense.
they're just like basic and flat.
But it's kind of, I mean, that was all that was needed a lot of times.
Hmm.
And I mean, like when you take a look at some of the more prominent characters, you get slightly more interesting designs.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
when the characters do show a lot of emotion, it gets a lot more detailed and intense.
exactly.
I think the background art was really nice.
Mhm.
It's kind
No
of like
doubt.
very sharp and sketchy way, especially like trees and clouds and
Yep.
environments.
I mean, the landscapes were it's interesting. It kind of reminds me of what's the philosophy? I don't even remember the saying, but it's like um the journey not being about the destination or whatever.
Yeah.
Um that's honestly, in my opinion, that seems like the overlying philosophy of the show.
It's about the
Um
journey, not the destination.
yeah.
I think a lot of it too is if we want to get into like more into Kino as a character, of the
Mhm.
fact that Kino doesn't have a destination.
Yeah,
And throughout the show it always feels like Kino is searching for this destination in a way.
for sure.
And trying to find a place that she can fit in and live in for like the rest of her life or something maybe.
Well, and
I think that's shown
interestingly,
best with like her backstory and then the
yeah,
13th episode.
exact. I was about to bring up the 13th episode, but I think that we should
I
shelve
think we
that
can go
for
into that.
you. Do you think so? Okay.
I think there's not too
Um,
much to say about the art design. It's simple, it's nice, and it's effective.
yeah, I think it conveys the message it needs to convey.
Yeah, it's not too much. It's not super stylistic, but it works and
Hmm.
it's there. And sometimes the animation can look really cool.
Exactly, and it's like, yeah, no, it ties the pieces together, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all we need to comment on. um, yeah, and then I don't know. Do you want to get into more plot heavy stuff, or do you
Yeah,
have
let's get
other?
into the plot. I
All right.
I think that sounds great.
I want to start with the 13th episode actually. I know that's
Okay.
like the last episode, but I do want
A
to start with it.
conclusion. Yeah.
Um because it's so episodic, but there is a period of time. There's like you can tell when certain episodes take place.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, I want to start with the 13th episode because I think that that episode you see where Kino develops her philosophy for staying only 3 days.
Yeah, that actually you can kind of pinpoint where that episode is because that's the
Exactly.
episode where Kino gets her secondary gun,
Yep. No, exactly. That's how you can tell when it is.
which is like
Um,
I think that takes place before almost every other
it
episode
takes
in the
place
series aside from
before,
the
aside from the ones that show her starting her journey.
yeah, aside from like
Um,
the first episode or not the first one. I think that's the fourth one.
I think
It's
so
her
too.
flashback episode.
Yep.
So it's like
Um,
after that.
yeah. So, but yeah, so it's like that is, I think, and it's really interesting that it's shown last, but it's kind of
Mhm.
cool. And but yeah, you
But the
can
fact that
see.
it's like I mean, it's I think the same with like the origination episode where you see the backstory and our character first develop. I think
Yep.
it all kind of builds into itself where you can already you establish this character and you show this character in different situations, and then you finally bring it back to
Well,
understanding the character themselves.
exactly. I mean, the first episode, what was the first one? Was it
That's the that's the
uh
one where Kino goes to the abandoned kingdom, pretty much, where everybody's living by themselves because
right,
they can't bear to be around other
the
people.
yes, the one where they can read each other's minds.
Yeah,
Um right. So in this we start and actually I think the initial opening scene was Kino in a desert, right?
yeah.
Which actually takes place I think post the entire series, right?
Is that what?
I think so.
Oh, where Kino shows up to where Kino's in Desert B.
Desert, yeah.
So like after the
I
13th
think it's
episode, when Kino
well no,
heads
desert,
to
because right at the start of episode 1 it's we have Desert A is the scene, I believe.
oh
So it which is actually a really interesting thing that you'll notice in I've seen here and there in other media of just starting with like oh we're in this situation, how did we get here? It's a little differently
Yeah.
done in this, but we do see that. Um, but so we open with that, and we have a little bit of a just like, why are we on our journey? What's going on? We have this kind of honestly almost seeming apathetic character.
Hmm.
But then we open with yeah, and then we open with this country where it seems like there's nobody there, and whenever there is somebody there, they run away, and everything is run by machines.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
a really effective way to start the
mm-hmm.
series as well because it just lets you be introduced to these two characters
Yep,
by just giving you so much solitary time with them, and it
and then
sets up the premise. Like it starts off with the two characters, shows that they're on a journey, and shows who
mm-hmm.
they are, and then it sets up the idea of going to a kingdom, going there for 3 days, and then it moves on to the characters. Yeah, you can keep going.
Exactly. Well, no, and then it introduces us to what they're trying to do in every country when they
Hmm.
begin talking to that man. Um, but it's
Yeah,
also
learn why the
like
country is the way it is.
exactly, and it's like, but we also it's like very informative. It's you see how the series will proceed, but you
Hmm.
don't know why it's starting that. And then actually, interestingly, there's one other scene where because Kino meets this man who um I think who like was talking about how in their country they they essentially in order to better communicate they decided, okay, we're all going to be able to communicate via our minds and communicate our emotions
Yeah.
that way. And but we so Kino meets this man who tells her that. Um and then talks about how I guess is it his wife. Well, just call her his wife.
Yeah. That was
Um
his wife, I think.
how
That's what it was,
they
yeah.
got together, but then like direct communication wasn't working for them
No, the fact that such a very direct communication, the fact that they can tell exactly what the other one's thinking, the fact that
at all
there's no
times.
way at all
So,
times that there's no respite to just be by themselves
yeah,
and that there's
and they can't even think about something else intentionally because you can tell when somebody's doing that.
yeah, you
But
can't
anyway, so
deceive each other in a nice way.
no, exactly, which is an interesting thing about just being like is a basis of human communication being able to not tell somebody everything.
Mm. I think that bit also sets up the whole tone for the
Mm-hmm.
series just in its I mean, that first episode, it does a really good job of setting that up
Well, and
without,
then
like, being too brutal because the next episode gets into some
oh yeah,
dark stuff.
oh yeah,
But, this kind of sets up a more of an eerie atmosphere, and the
yep,
fact that the world has good in it, he finds these people, and these people want to connect to each other, but they're just kind of a victim of their own circumstances, and that they've kind of fucked it up for themselves.
mm-hmm. Well, and it
And
also
in a way of trying to find true happiness,
yeah,
they mess something up along the way, and now they're stuck in a shitty situation.
yeah. Well, but it also does a really, really good job of setting up Kino's neutrality.
Mm.
Because it's this one specific scene of this man talks about how he loves music and his wife loved flowers, but they didn't really care about it that much. But then then later Kino notices that the man was keeping flowers, like kind of as a
Yeah.
memory of his wife.
Yeah.
Because while she wasn't dead, they like argued too much, and now they were living in separate
Yeah,
houses
they lived in everybody lived in
because
separate houses. Yeah.
they couldn't bear to be around another person. But then later we see Kino find another house with roses, but also playing music, and so it
Which was the music the husband liked, and it
exact, and
was
it's
yeah.
the implication that they really wanted to be together, but they just couldn't. And
And yeah, it was like Kino's kind of just
there,
smiling and
yep,
then leaving.
exactly,
And
just
Kino
sees it,
doesn't do anything.
notices,
Kino
and
doesn't
leaves.
yeah, Kino doesn't go into the woman's house be like, "Ah, I met your husband, blah 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 blah." Kino doesn't try and fix the situation. She doesn't do anything. She just goes, that's the way it is.
Yep,
They'll have
which
to figure it out for themselves.
exactly, and it's really, I mean, in my opinion, that does a really good job of setting up
No, that's like the perfect way to set the
exactly
entire
how.
situation up. And then I love the fact that I mean, it's well paced in the way of like
Yep.
the second episode just plays right off that,
Uh huh.
where of Kino does help people, he
Yep.
helps this
It's other
group of three
supposedly
men
travelers. They're like merchants traveling between
where,
countries.
well, I mean, they're going back from doing business in another country back to their home
Exactly.
country. And sets it up as
Um,
these people are harmless. They seem like good people.
yeah,
And Kino's like sees them dying though because they don't have any food and they're hurting. She helps them out, and yeah, then the plot twist comes in at the end of the episode of
they're slave traders.
they're slave traders and they're trying to make Kino a slave because
Towards the end.
yeah, this is
Um,
like yeah, right at the end. You find this out after Kino helps these people, gets them back on their feet so they can go back to their country. And they
exactly.
go after Kino, and then you find out why Kino carries around a gun.
No, exactly, because Kino's priority is to survive, which in later episodes become is explicitly stated later. Um,
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah,
very much a main theme of Kino's.
Kino's
Is
priority is survival at the foremost.
yeah, you can't find happiness if you're not alive, you know,
Exactly. That's
which is a
exactly
good
it.
message.
Um,
Yeah, and it's like this completely brutal scene. It shocked me of just like how everything picks up in this brutal scene of Kino just mercilessly killing these three people,
well, exactly, and it
and you're
wasn't.
like, oh my god.
I mean, and Kino tried to. I guess
Didn't want to. Kino
didn't
didn't.
want to clearly, but it kind of that's what happened. Um,
Yeah, she was put into a situation where it was me or them, you know?
exactly, and we learned Kino's like, I will survive. Or it
Yeah.
actually it's I don't want to die. That's
Mm.
that is what part. That's a big part of Kino's philosophy is I don't want to die. Um, and Kino, we also later see Kino doesn't want to kill. Back to that.
No, that was
Um,
where I kind of I want to know what the actual chronological order of the show is because for that episode that yeah, where you see Kino not wanting to kill somebody
yeah,
during
the
the place
Colosseum.
without war.
Was it
Oh, the place without war where Kino I mean there's yeah, both episodes
both
actually, the Coliseum
episodes?
and the
I
place without
think.
war.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the Colosseum really highlights it because that's the entire thing. Um,
Mhm. Well, I
but yeah,
think kind
uh
of the place without war though is an interesting take on that of where you
huh,
see Kino kind of regret her actions
no
because in the
doubt.
end of the
Well,
place without war episode, the whole thing for the place without war is the fact that the reason the place doesn't have war is because the country they'd be warring with, they kind of just take it out on this other worse off country that they believe is lower than them,
yeah.
and they just murder them instead. And then when Kino's leaving the country, those people who are, you know, treated horribly and murdered for the benefit of these other countries come to kill Kino because they need to vent out their anger.
Hmm.
And Kino, in self defense, shoots one of them.
Well,
And you get this shot of Kino just kind of freaking out after doing so, you
I
know?
could tell if she actually shot somebody or not during that.
No, she did die. She shoots the guy who runs at her first and
Well,
kills him, right?
okay, I
Wait,
guess. No,
I,
because
I want to pull up this episode.
what my impression was the gunshot scared them. Was my impression because they're so used to they're I mean they're so vitally afraid of gunshots for obvious reason. Um that the volume and the fact that Kino has guns made them leave. I wasn't
Wait,
clear
I
on
thought
whether or not they
does that's a yeah,
I
that's an
I
interesting
didn't because
question. Does Kino
I
kill
didn't
anybody
see any
there?
blood. I
Which
didn't
episode was that? Oh, there's
episode
12.
12.
Okay, wait,
Um
I'm at the point. So Kino, wait.
research
So this
time.
guy runs at Kino,
Yep.
stabs.
Yep. I
You
rem-
actually don't see any blood.
exactly. I remember him stumbling back, but I never
Yeah, you
saw
see
any
him
blood.
stumble. Oh,
Which
you're right. That's crazy. Wait, what? I
because
didn't even.
and you'll notice Kino's gun wasn't aimed at him, I think.
Yeah,
It
no, no.
was
You get this
aimed
shot.
over
You
his
get
shoulder.
yeah, you get the shot. I mean, I thought it was just kind of a quirk of the art style, always being kind of like off kilter a
Yeah,
little bit. But yeah, you do have the gun pointing slightly angled away from the dude's face. I thought
exactly.
that was just like a little weird thing where they played with perspective, but yeah, I think because there is no blood in that show,
Yep.
the show does not refrain from showing a good bit
No.
of blood.
No, it doesn't.
So
Well,
yeah,
and I
maybe
think
Kino
it's
doesn't actually kill anybody.
well, yeah, exactly. At least in that
Oh
point.
God, yeah, yeah,
And I think
right then
I think
there,
I think the fact that there's no blood and the fact that we don't see them die is a pretty good indication that they didn't. Because the show
yeah,
is from Kino's perspective, and for Kino, taking a life is significant. So
yeah,
that's
no.
why we see every single death,
Actually, I
or at
think
least
that might actually be explain why Kino at that point is like just kind of freaking out because
yep,
Kino comes so close to killing somebody and is trying to refrain from doing so
that makes
the
sense to
best as
me.
she possibly can. Maybe I think that's an interesting way of interpreting that scene because it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't directly go,
I mean,
"This
the
guy's
fact of
dead
the
or
matter
not."
is, who knows? We don't.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Maybe it
think
says more in the light novel if
uh
Kino actually did.
I don't know.
But
I
yeah,
think
it's
it's a
not this.
significantly more interesting scene if Kino didn't kill the person.
I mean,
Um,
I definitely like the idea of just leaving it up to your interpretation because I interpreted it as Kino killing the dude
uh-huh.
and then freaking out as everybody runs away.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm of the opinion that Kino didn't, but
Yeah, because
it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
it seems more significant in my opinion for Kino not to have killed them, but to have the I mean, I think the pause also was to appreciate their terror. They were
yeah,
terrified of gunshots, which I mean, if you see how they're literally massacred by these two countries with guns, it
yeah.
makes
So it creates
sense.
this innate fear of guns.
Exactly.
And the fact that they just, yeah, they take a second, everything goes quiet, and then they just break out and
Well,
start screaming and running.
and you hear the echoing gunshot too,
Yeah.
which I couldn't tell if that was an effect of just kind of like significance or of being like the echo
No.
created the idea of there being more gunshots, so it brought them right back to
No,
um
I think it's you get those gunshots even after they've left. I think it's more of
uh
a perspective of Kino thing.
yep, the
Of Kino hearing it
echoing,
in
replaying,
her own
replay,
ears,
replay.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
and being scared to actually shoot anybody, but I think that's also why I wanna know where that might be in the chronological order of the series, because, like,
Yeah.
it could be from the perspective of a Kino who has never killed anybody before, and then maybe the
Right.
Kino in the second episode is a Kino who's already experienced
I mean,
having to
most of
kill
them
people.
are extremely ambiguous. I didn't
Yeah.
notice whether or not Kino did Ki wait, wait, we can tell. We can tell somewhere. Did Kino have the second gun in that episode?
Oh, you're right, does
Um,
because she pulls out the revolver, so that's the first gun. I
yeah.
don't think you
That the well no, because
wait, oh, no, the
right at
country
the
does
start.
check guns at the start of the
Exactly.
episode.
So
So
I
she
think she
does
did
so it's
have
after
both.
the 13th episode. So yeah,
Okay. Well,
that could place it anywhere in the series after the
exactly.
13th
Do you
episode,
do you
chronologically.
remember did Kino have the second gun during the Colosseum? I think
Yeah,
so, right?
definitely,
Yes.
definitely, yeah.
Cuz we saw it strapped there.
Kino had the second gun in the second episode and the Colosseum episode.
Yeah. So, honestly, I mean, we don't know for certain, but
Mhm.
I'd like again, it's the very interesting it seems extremely significant. So, I'm of the opinion it's much earlier on.
Yeah, okay, I'm just gonna take this back to the chronological thing for a second.
Uh-huh.
Remember the second episode how Kino I mean, this is the gun Kino uses is like the knife gun, the gun like the
Yep.
knife with a little gun implanted in it.
Yep.
You don't see that any other time in the show.
Nowhere else.
And so I think that's kind of safe to assume that maybe the second episode takes place much further in the future
I mean,
than the rest of the series.
I think so. Yeah. Um,
'Cause it's definitely a
I mean, Kino's much
kind of
more comfortable, honestly.
killing people, yeah.
Well, comfortable killing people and just in general.
With, like,
Kino
the world itself and
Kino is
accepting
very
things.
solid, knows what she's doing, is much more the just I'm traveling than
Yeah,
many of the others.
honestly, it kind of feels like chronologically the show just moves backwards.
Uh-huh.
You ever get that feeling?
A
I
little
just
bit.
because of the way it ends, the fact that episode 13 is kind of the start in a way of Kino's journey, because even though you do have the flashback episode, it doesn't start with the flashback. You get a
Yeah.
preamble from Kino and then her flashbacking,
Yep.
which I that episode is also really good and
That was so
explains so
cool.
much about the
I
character. It's
know,
fucking
right?
crazy.
Um, which, well, I'm assuming you noticed the parallels between episode 4 and episode 13, right?
Oh my, this the most overt
They
parallels,
were
yeah.
they were so not subtle, but it was
No,
really
it's
really
not meant to be
cool.
subtle. I think,
Um,
yeah, do you wanna talk about episode 13 now? I think that's one
yes,
of the
yes,
best.
let's. It's so cool. It's so good. Oh
So,
my, oh
episode
my.
13, we've chronologically put it somewhere towards the earlier bit of Kino's journey.
I'd
Um,
place it. I mean, it's obviously post episode 4, but I think it's before most of the others.
yeah, it's after Kino has trained with her master person, you know? I think
Which,
it's not too long after. I think it takes place as, like, yeah, the beginning point in chronologically for the series in a way.
yeah, no,
And
I mean, that makes the
that
most
episode is
sense.
so weird. It's such an eerie and uncomfortable episode where
Despite the fact
because
that
of
it's super comfortable.
yeah, it's the way it's directed. I think the director does a great job of
Oh
making
my
things so
god.
eerie. I mean,
Oh
you can
yeah.
tell that's like the same thing for Wayne as well.
Mhm.
Um, he's just really good at doing that. But this episode is the fact that you have 12 other episodes that all have a society where something goes wrong, or people that are just built wrong.
Yep.
you know, they live in a world that is fucked,
Yeah,
and
in
so you
some
kind
way
of
or another.
come to assume by the 13th episode something fucked is
Something
going to
is
happen,
wrong. Something
especially
is wrong.
with the connection to the main side character
Uh-huh.
of that episode,
I half
and
expected it to be Kino's original country. Honestly,
or
that
something like that. I was expecting maybe kind of, I wasn't sure, but I was kind of maybe expecting it to be like Kino dies at the end of that episode, kind of
I
like
know
how
and
the
pass
original Kino
exactly, and it
dies
was like the
and then
start of a new
passes on the
cycle.
torch. Yeah, I
Um,
was expecting that, which made the episode so uncomfortable because it was like I was waiting for that to
yeah.
happen. And the
Well,
fact of the matter is, there's nothing wrong with the country in
no,
a
no.
way.
Well, and but it also it doesn't help the fact that they started um
Yeah,
they started
it was a total
with
misdirection.
saying this country is infamous with travelers because they like treat them poorly,
They're
they
just rude to
yada yada
travelers.
yada.
Yeah, no, it's like yeah, it starts with the route to travelers, and then with like the obvious connection to Kino's character and this other
Yeah.
character, which reminds you of the episode earlier in the
Uh,
series, and then
and oh my
and then the
god, it was
fucking
such a
misdirect. Oh my
oh
god,
no, it was such a crazy episode cuz okay, so
it's a
I think that we should go through the episode. So just to like so we're not just like going, "Oh, so cool." Um
yeah,
so the episode opens with Kino entering this country that is well known for
just not
character
being
for
too good to
yeah,
travelers.
exactly. They're just typically not the best. Um but then it seems like a well,
People are extremely nice to travelers
they're
as soon as
nice,
Kino enters. They're nice to
helpful.
Kino. They're handing Kino all these things like, "Here, take this on your travels. Here you
Yep.
go. Here you go." They're
And
all
then
greeting Kino at the front gate.
and then but then we see all these parallels between Kino's past in a which I think we should get into in a minute. Um
Yeah, but
Kino's
with a
past with a really bad country.
mhm.
Um
Kino is like, you want to talk about episode 4, the
I think we
Kino's
should finish this episode first.
origination, or do you want to?
I think
Well,
let's
I think
go.
it. I kind of. Do you want to explain? Just kind of mix that into the explanation
All
here
right,
with
yeah.
the Kino meets a young girl.
Right.
Kino is presumably a girl who's in her teens, you know,
Somewhere around there.
but
Um
you see very obviously shot parallels and other parallels, tons of parallels. This
well,
girl's
actually,
parents own a hotel. Kino's parents owned a
yeah.
hotel, and when Kino was young, Kino met
Uh
a traveler named
right.
Kino, um, which is where she gets her name. But she met Kino. This original Kino brought Kino to her hotel, and then eventually, by the end of her backstory, this original Kino dies saving our main character,
Yeah,
Kino. This is
and
I
that's
hate the naming
actually
to try and explain this, but, yeah,
um
the people of her country are trying to kill her because she goes against the grain, and this original traveler, Kino, gets stabbed instead trying to protect her, and
well,
she runs off
and
with the
it's
traveler's motorrad Hermes.
mhm, and it's crazy. I mean, okay, but then like exactly, we see all of these parallels with this episode 13 where
Mhm.
there's this young girl presumably named the same name that Kino originally
Yeah,
had,
Sakura is her
Sakura.
name.
Um Presumably, we don't know for sure, but
Yeah.
we can assume.
Yeah,
And
yeah, we
then
can just guess.
this girl brings Kino the traveler to her family's hotel,
Yeah,
and
just like
they get
Kino
they
originally
get
knew
along
the other
fine.
Kino.
They they hang out, they meet, they spend time together, they um and then but then they throw this curveball of this girl actually just wants to stay.
Yeah, her
That's
parents give her the option. See, for Kino's backstory, Kino wanted to leave her country and become an
well,
explorer like the Kino that she
no,
met,
not even.
right? Wasn't that what it
No.
was? Or
It originally
what
Kino
was it?
not even at all actually. Um
It wa
what happened was Kino in Kino's original country, everybody over the age of 12 was considered an adult. It was the country of
Yeah.
adults. And they went through this operation that meant that they could be happy even doing things that they hate. But
Yeah.
theoretically, it also removes their autonomy or their like something that makes them human. That's like that's kind of
Yeah.
the implication.
They're
Um,
forced to grow up.
exactly. And then, but so we meet Kino, the original
Male Kino, let's just
male
call
Kino.
him that.
Male Kino comes and is talking to uh young Kino. Let's go with that. Because this is the only episode where they're in the same. But anyway, male Kino's talking to young Kino, where and they're just talking like that's it.
Yeah.
And he says, well, by your country's standards, I'm not an adult because
I never went through this operation.
exactly. And then Kino, all that
Yeah, it
happens is
ingrains.
that young Kino asks, "What happens if I don't get the operation?
First, yeah, is there no other way that I can become an adult
Can I grow up on my
just being
own?"
myself? Yeah.
And then
Yeah, to which her
instantly
country
tries to kill her
it turns on her.
and
Yeah, they go,
forces her
"You're a fucking
parents to
failure."
try to kill her
And I mean, her
too.
parents have no resistance to this. It's not really
Not at
forcing her.
all.
They're
Well,
with it
no, they're
because they're
doing
not.
it. They're all for it.
Yeah, they're human. They're not human. They've lost the bit that
Oh
gives them any
God.
form
And
of like
then
moral.
well,
It's
and
so fucking
this
weird.
pushes the message through of male Kino jumps in front of the knife intended for young Kino.
Yeah,
And then they all just stand around his body, and they're like, "Well,
no reaction.
no adult would logically do this, so it must be an accident. What should we do? Oh, we're all adults here. Let's
Yeah,
discuss this properly over a fucking bleeding out man that you
yeah.
just
They kill,
stabbed."
they kill a guy. It's like it's not our responsibility.
No,
It was his
well,
fault for jumping in front of
and
our
then
knife.
the wife is like, "Well, what a logical first step is, let's pull out the knife." And they're like, "Yes, you're right.
That's so
We're all
fucked. Oh
adults
my god.
here." It was so
Yeah.
messed up.
And then that's when young Kino just fucking makes a break
Books it.
for it on the motorbike,
Exactly.
and then yeah,
Um and that
yeah,
well, yeah, and that's when we meet Hermes.
yeah,
It's called a motorrad, which is a
yeah. It's just a
talking
motorbike.
motorcycle. It's a
Yeah,
talking motorcycle. Um
but yeah, you can see all these obvious connections with this 13th episode of these
all
people
these
being really
parallels.
nice and seemingly perfect, and then this kid
Well,
who is
and
seems a little bit different and similar to Kino.
it instantly trips all of your something's wrong because it's too similar.
Yeah,
But then and yeah,
it's not.
it's not. And as I was saying earlier, the first instance is the kid just wants to stay. But
The kid
then
wants to become a ho. Yeah, an adult and manage the hotel.
Exactly.
And there is no surgery in this country. This country has
Nothing.
nothing, no gimmick. They're
They're
just a
just a
happy
country.
country. And
Um, and then
then
it goes
Kino
on.
says,
Kino has a good time, right?
and then the third day rolls around.
Well,
Kino
actually,
said she would only be staying for 3
we
days.
well, and we have this. I will point out there was Kino meets this gunsmith.
It's not that important, but
It's
yeah,
not that
sure.
important. Well, it's how we mark the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Kino meets a gunsmith, and the
Kino meets the
gunsmith
gunsmith, and the gunsmith
gives her,
gifts her her second gun, or I guess they're called persuaders, which is really
which is
interesting.
which is kind of, yeah, it's
It's a
a bit
little
on
on
the
the nose,
nose.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, that's how we marked the time. Is that's when Kino receives
Yeah.
the gun. But anyway,
And then
but Kino
so yeah,
just has a generally lovely time in the country. But
and then third day
we're
rolls around.
constantly thinking something's wrong, something's wrong.
Yeah. Third day rolls around, nothing's wrong. In that
Um,
we've seen so far. But they're kind of, Kino goes, maybe I can stay for an extra day or two, which is,
and then they're
very out of
instantly,
character for
no,
our And yeah, they
no,
hit you with the
you
don't do that.
cannot, don't you dare.
Uh,
Um,
you said 3 days, leave. And you're like,
exactly.
oh, okay,
You
this is
have
where
to
we're gonna
leave.
find out where something's wrong.
No,
And then
exactly.
Kino leaves. Everybody gives Kino these things. Kino leaves, and then the evening rolls
Well,
around.
can yeah. So, well, and
And
we expect what we expect is honestly, I was feeling Kino's gonna go back. Kino's gonna go back, and we're gonna see something really fucked up.
yeah,
That's what I was expecting. And then so, they well actually they made as Kino was leaving, they said make sure to go past the ridge because there might be rock falls and that might be dangerous.
yeah,
So, Kino, well, and Kino sets up on this cliffside that has this perfect overview of this country, which actually is where the episode opens, with this
yeah.
perfect overview of this like pretty
Small country.
landscape, small country, and that's where Kino stops for the night and makes camp.
Can I just point out something?
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit of irony. They say a line before Kino leaves.
Yeah.
They say "see you again,"
Uh huh.
which is such an ominous line
Oh God.
because
Yeah.
you could already tell that's a lie as
Yep.
soon as you hear it.
Yep.
And yeah, so Kino's set up on this mountain, and in the middle of the night, Kino
Kino.
wakes up, and to the sound of
Well, Kino wakes up.
this.
There was no sound. Even it was
Was it?
just a bad
Wait, is
feeling.
it?
It was a bad
Oh
feeling.
yeah,
Kino
yeah,
wakes
so a
up and
bad feeling.
draws her gun, and it's
There's a feeling of danger,
scanning. What's wrong? Something's wrong. Something's wrong. And then we hear this rumbling and this
Yeah,
sliding of lava. It's a
this is just a
volcanic eruption
massive wave of lava sliding down the side of the mountain right into
right
the
above
kingdom.
this country that's settled in a valley. It's in a valley.
Yeah, and then it covers the entire kingdom,
And
killing everybody there.
yeah, and the
You don't
entire
get
country's just gone.
Kino can't do anything. Yeah,
That's
I mean
it.
it's lava, you'll die.
Yeah, it's done. And that's just like
and then
that's the end. um
and then you get the last few minutes of the episode of Kino reading these people's
yeah,
notes to her, and it's
and
just so fucked
it's just sad.
of how
It's sad.
all these people in the kingdom already knew about it. They knew that this
Yeah.
was going to happen to them, and they didn't want to leave their country. They accepted their fate,
Yeah.
and they
Even though
decided to be.
they easily could have, which and they had this one line of it might not make sense to a traveler like you why we don't want to leave our country, but that this is our choice. And
Yeah, and the way
that's just oh, oh.
and the fact that they were so nice to Kino, it's all explained, is they were, they used to be mean. Their ancestors were mean to travelers, and they wanted to fix that before they died.
Yeah.
They wanted to try and remedy that, but Kino is their only visitor, and this was 3 days before they all died.
And they were
And that's why they gave Kino so many things, and we're trying to be so nice, and we're so happy
exactly.
about Kino's arrival. It's just,
Oh.
that was such a good way of sending off the series.
It was so good. And then it was like but because chronologically we know it happened much earlier than almost all of it. It sets up this, I guess, not apathetic, but this character that
Well, it's
is
just
much more willing to get to not be invested.
Well, a
Um,
character that doesn't want to get invested, it shows why Kino would like to avoid being invested into a place, because this is what
exactly.
happens. Kino becomes heartbroken, and it's not worth it.
Exactly. And then add on top of that the 3-day limit, which seems like such a why?
It's
What's up with that?
arbitrary. Yeah, it's an arbitrary number
But then
in a way.
Kino arrives at this country 3 days before they know the country is going to like cease to exist and says, I'm going
Yeah,
to stay for 3 days. And so they greet Kino warmly and make sure Kino leaves before the country's dead.
yeah. It sets up this rule in Kino's mind of the 3-day limit. There's no
Exactly.
I should not stay in a country for more than
Do
three
not
days.
don't
I've
stay more
learned
than
my
three
lesson.
days.
I've learned my lesson.
Exactly. Well,
um,
actually, curiously, do you remember how many days she stayed with the merchants?
I think that
I think it was 4.
could have. Is it 4?
I think so.
I I mean, but the difference between that though is that's also not a country.
Right. It's I
That
well,
was
it's
just Kino on
but
a
at the same
journey. But
time,
yeah,
interestingly, things just went crazily wrong during that one, and Kino stayed longer.
I think
So,
that's also the idea of Kino's involvement as
yep,
well,
yep.
causing an issue.
Well, not really causing an issue, but yeah, in a sense.
Well,
Um,
resulting in Kino g- getting into this bad situation for herself.
exactly. Um, yeah, but so it's such a fascinating show. Um,
Definitely, I think it poses a lot of questions that we have about just about our own society.
uh-huh.
It makes us look at things from a different lens.
What?
I I mean, the thing about like the country where all work is automated,
Yep.
yet people still choose to do work, and then that kind of mirroring these railroad workers. You said you didn't understand that, but
I
it was
didn't
like,
fully understand it. No.
well,
Um,
so like, okay, let's. Kino meets a railroad worker who's. I'm just going to be general about this. I
yeah.
don't think I have to get too specific. He's spent his whole life to just fixing up these rails because
Yeah.
one day, 50 years ago, he was told, "Hey, you can go fix up those rails."
We might use it someday. Please
We
go
might
fix
use
it.
it when they're all fixed up. And he's like, all right, I'll fix them up. And
All
then
right.
he's been doing that for 50 years. The money's
Yeah.
getting sent to his family who he hasn't talked to in 50 years because he's been on these rails fixing them up. Kino approaches this man, tells him about the country where people have everything that's just automated already.
Yep.
Everything is done by machines, but they still choose to work
Uh-huh. Which
for
which was weird. Well,
no other reason aside from the fact that it
apparently you need
provides
to
them with it provides them with stress, and they believe that stress is something that you innately need
yeah.
to survive, or else there's no
Ugh.
reason.
I
But
could do
it's
without
also
stress.
this. I think it's more of the idea of having a sense of reason to
Purpose.
do things, a
No, actually,
purpose,
yeah, yeah,
and then it being reflected in the fact that as Kino continues past this guy, Kino finds another man who is just whose job is to take apart this unused railroad,
yep.
who's been working at this job for 50 years and is just ever so far enough
It
behind.
was a day. It was exactly a day.
Oh yeah, a day behind. So it's like just far enough away to where this guy wouldn't notice the other guy further up ahead.
Yep.
And then so he's been picking up all these bars and putting off to the side, all the rails off the railroad. And then there's a guy right after him, one day after him,
Yep.
whose whole job is to take these railroads that have been taken off and place them back.
Well, it was to rebuild the railroad, and he was
Yeah,
saying, "Oh,
rebuild this
it's
railroad
so
that's been taken
convenient
apart.
that
That all
all the
these things are right
resources I
here.
need are right here."
And it's just this whole idea of the fact that none of these guys are actually doing a job that's necessary.
Yep.
Because it's not like this railroad is going to be used reasonably. It was 50
Not at
years
all.
ago. They could have probably just built a whole other railroad. And then the idea of, you know, the first guy's work just instantly goes to waste, and same with the second guy, and even maybe the third guy.
Yep.
You know, it could continue like that forever.
Exactly.
The fact that maybe some of the work we do is useless, and it's
Yeah.
such a desolate thought,
And it
and
was
so
interesting.
horrible.
It was
But
interesting.
it's a good question to pose of why work if your work doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
That's another thing I think the special goes over. Did you watch that?
I did not.
There's the one called Freelance. It's the 14-minute OVA,
Yeah.
which is about a country that builds a tower. That's all everybody in the country does, is they're just building this massive tower.
Huh.
And the OVA ends with the tower collapsing
Uh-oh.
and them deciding to go, okay, we're gonna build it up again. And everybody's like really happy because they got to see the tower collapse in their
Oh,
lifetime.
actually, that's
Did
kind
you
of
watch that?
similar. No,
Okay.
no, but I was gonna bring up the end of the world prophecy one.
Oh,
Which
what
is
can I
just
just? Yeah, that's a weird one. But
yeah.
can I continue with?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, for
okay.
sure, for sure.
So yeah, they built this tower. And then they finally get to see it fall, and they're all happy because they're like, "Oh my god, it fell!" And you think they're happy because they don't have to work on this tower anymore. It's fallen
Yeah.
over, and this idea that all their work has gone to waste. And then they go, "Okay, time to start building the tower again." And you're like, "What?" And
Why?
there's a side character who comes back and he goes, "Kino, don't you see this is crazy that we're just building a tower to watch it fall? Isn't that insane?"
Yeah.
And Kino goes, "I don't know. Maybe you're the one that's insane. Maybe everybody here is insane.
Uh-huh.
I'm not one to say that. But what you can do is that you can make this tower yours. You can personalize it." And she brings up the idea of, like putting decals on the tower, carvings, engravings, anything you want to make this tower yours. I feel like that's such a weird thing that
Uh-huh.
you can attach pretty well to the railroad story
Yeah.
of this solution to like doing pointless work is by making it yours.
Uh-huh.
You want to talk about the
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so it's
the
interesting.
prophecy episode?
The prophecy episode. The prophecy. Well, so it starts with this country of where they all know the world is gonna end the day after
Or
tomorrow.
they believe it's going to end the day after
Well,
tomorrow.
they're
Mm.
convinced.
Yeah. There's this
Um,
priest, and he's been telling everybody the world's going to end. It's a world end cult type of thing.
which we can get into why they think that later, I think, for a moment.
Yeah.
But it's just the reason I wanted to bring this up is that when they talk about it, it eventually the day after tomorrow comes around and the world doesn't end. The sun still
Yeah.
rises.
That's a thing that happens. That's a real thing, and I find that so hilarious
Yeah.
that it feels like such an outlandish thought, and it's a real thing that really happens, and people get invested in it, and they do crazy things. It's like real stories of people
Well,
spending all of their money because they think the world's going to end tomorrow, and it
wasn't
doesn't.
wasn't there a thing about 2012?
Yeah, it was the 2012 one,
Um,
and then it didn't happen, and people
and
got
then
really
there
mad
there
about it.
was also a thing about 2000, I think,
Yeah,
with
Y2K.
yep,
Yeah, the world's gonna end because the
the computers will
fucking
stop counting.
computers are gonna crash. All these crazy conspiracies, and then some people actually do buy into them. And
Yep.
yeah, this country is
But
a country
so
that bought into it.
well, and every single person did. But everybody despaired when they were like, "Well, the world didn't end. What now? What do we do?"
Yeah,
And and then another priest comes out and says, "He was wrong. The world will actually end in 33 years." And then everybody was like,
yeah,
"Hooray!" Now we have, and it was like a purpose kind of thing.
yeah.
It
Or
seemed like
it
where
was
they,
kind of what's this? Yeah, it's a belief in religion on top of the fact that religion kind of gives purpose, and
uh-huh. Well,
that
and
all of
like,
these the fact that there's a limited amount of time also gives us purpose
yeah.
because none of us actually know when we're going to die or if we're going to die in general, and it'd be kind of easier to plan around it if you knew exactly when you were going to die,
I mean, yeah,
in a
exactly.
way. And that's kind of what this does for these people is it gives them a last day, a thing to finalize for themselves.
Oh yeah. No doubt.
Then the ending of that episode I find is just it's so great. Oh my god, it's
Where
because it's so
they
ridiculous.
well, which piece? Um
The tanks.
right. Right. Well, actually, and so we can bring that up where Kino later goes to this country where it's just sad. Everybody is sad because there's this poem that is constantly being recited that's just depression. Depression but poetry. Um which arguably is a lot
The
of
the
poetry.
Venice, the one where Kino visits Venice
Yeah.
and everybody in Venice has depression. Yeah.
um but so we see this poem And it's like with it, we have this whole soulful story for why, and like the interpretation, and like everybody's sad because of this poem. But then later we hear, well, and the poem is very eerily similar to the prophecy written
Yeah.
for the other country that was convinced the world was going to end. And
Well, yeah.
but later we hear, oh, I heard that the poem at one point was recorded in a book, and now somebody somewhere else it's their book of prophecy. And it's just it's
I,
brings up
that's
these
a kind of a funny take on religion and
exactly.
the Bible and stuff like that. Holy
It's I
books.
mean, oh god, it's so directly just like, well, religion is entirely based on interpretation.
Yeah.
It's like this one thing means something entirely different in two different
It means yeah,
spots.
it means the
So
world is going to end to
these
this one country.
people,
The other country is just like,
the
their little folk story.
exactly. And
They're-
it's such a like, this is just that, it's such a, that's just how it works. It's all interpretation, and it's all, religion's meaning comes from the human element is kind of what I get from that.
and then the final country is so Kino meets this soldier
Yeah,
after seeing being waking up in the or is it I don't it doesn't matter if
it doesn't
she was
matter.
waking up, but she sees all these tanks going towards the first country that didn't die to the doomsday cult, and didn't the world didn't end. That country that's just now,
Yeah.
obsessed with their doomsday call, and she sees a bunch of tanks go towards that country, and she's like, "What's this about?" And a soldier walks over and goes, "Oh," and just kind of explains that. Well,
The
we
prophecy
also
says.
found this. We also found this prophecy, and we read that and we interpreted that as the fact that we're the people who have to end their lives.
Yeah.
We're the end of the world. We have to bring about this end of the world to this country.
Well, no, it's
And it's
in
like,
order to prevent the end of the world, we have to shatter the green disk. And
oh
isn't
yeah,
that
no,
country's shoreline perfectly circular?
oh
Um,
that's what it was. Oh god, yeah. We have to, yeah, no, and then they're the cause of this end of the world to this other country, and
yeah.
to them it's their interpretation that, yeah, them taking out this other country will save them. But the words, it's like, what, yeah, when 19 cold moons have crossed the sky and the night is past, the world will end with the rising of the sun. What else can we do other than smash the green
Yeah.
plate? It's
Yeah.
gibberish.
It's gibberish. It's literally, I mean, the whole, it's not even trying to be mean anything in the actual thing. And they
No.
literally state the poem was gibberish. It meant nothing, but it communicated depression. It was like, um it was sorrow, but it was like, yeah, it
I feel like that the ending bit, I feel like that was just, I felt like a joke. I felt like
it
it was just kind of like
it kind of
rubbing
was,
salt into the wound there, just making fun of this situation in its a weird, eerie way.
um
Uh
exactly.
I feel like there's a lot of these societies though.
No, yeah.
Like, it's either they're really depressing or it's just a fucking comedy presented in the most depressing way possible.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like a comedy bit.
um I don't know, it's such a fascinating show though. Were there any other, like, what countries really called to you personally, like,
I feel like we've kind of
I
talked
yeah,
about the ones. I think the book one was interesting. That one just
uh-huh,
felt more like a, there's a one, yeah, country obsessed with books. That felt like a very
well,
meta take
it wasn't
on,
even
like, you as a reader.
yeah,
No, it was
it,
just the
oh god,
episode was just about
it
books,
was
and
so weird
the
though.
and yeah, it was weird. It was like this weird. You're watching like a weird play or something play out,
Yeah.
and it was fever dream ish. It was very strange, and it was funny, and you couldn't tell what was really going on. It felt schizophrenic,
Uh-huh.
and that was kind of its thing, was the fact that, these people are so caught up in their books that they've kind of become, oh, disillusioned, or under the belief that they're the main character and they have to be
Yeah.
part of the story, and things are going to play out like a story, and it was, uh,
God, I was
just
so
kind of this
confused
meta
by that
take
entire
on,
episode.
I feel like a meta take on consumers and like readers, the people like watching this or reading the book,
Oh yeah.
of how they can become believe that they're within a story and that we all believe that we're in our own stories. And like book critics, the people are sent to this area, and the people who are obsessed with books are sent to this area where they're just forced to read books to approve whether the books are appropriate or not. And oh dude, that was a weird
Oh,
episode.
and they talked about like hoarding books too for a minute,
Yeah.
and then the kicker at the end is the entire library burned down. It was just
And
like
then yeah,
that
these
was the end.
and everybody's freaking out. It was just over.
And that was it. It was done.
That was that was a really weird meta
Ugh, it
episode.
was so strange. Um, yeah. Hmm.
I don't have too much else to talk
I don't
about the show.
know.
I think, I mean,
Um,
what do you? All in all, I think we both think this is like a really good show.
oh God, it was so good. And then, it was so thought provoking. And then actually, just
And then,
and
yeah,
then and then, interesting. Do you remember it was the dolls, the mechanical dolls?
yeah, I do remember
Um,
that.
that was just a weird episode. I do you mind talking about it for a minute, or
Sure. Which episode?
I don't remember which
Ooh,
episode number it
I
was.
think that's 10. Yeah, it was 10.
Um,
Yeah,
God, it was so weird. So the episode starts with Kino meeting this woman. Um, but this woman claims, or this woman says that she is a mechanical doll, and her job is to serve her master, mistress, and their son.
yeah. This
Um,
family,
exactly. It's she's. I mean, I don't want to say your typical robot maid, but she's a robot maid. Um,
and then you
and
meet the family.
they're just as weird as she is.
Yeah, they're
Um,
also robotic. They don't eat food, and they just throw it away.
exactly.
They're still and kind of awkward and lifeless.
Yep.
And yeah, then the twist at the end of the woman is in fact not a robot,
Yeah,
and she
she's
was the human who created the robots themselves
and but like she forgot because of an accident, and
because of all
essentially,
PTSD and all this. Yeah.
but essentially the reason the robots were sticking around to help her and maintain this farce was they were built by her to serve humans. Um and that was like kind of, I don't know if they took joy in it or not, but that's just
Well,
what they were for.
it was their purpose in life. I feel like
Yeah.
that's a very main thing with the show, finding purpose in life, and the fact
Uh-huh.
that when they lose her, they try and become servants to Kino.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
Kino
well,
goes, "No, I don't need you. I'm a traveler."
do you remember how, I forget who it was, but probably Hermes, how the and this is the first thing that tipped me off that something was up with the woman, was how she looks so happy when she looks at the family. Um
Oh, yeah,
and that
that
was
kind of tipped me
so
off too. I was
interesting
like,
cuz to me that's just like that, I couldn't tell if that was like she found happiness in having purpose or she just found
mhm.
happiness in helping others. I think
I think that's like both though.
yeah.
Is that was her purpose, and then yeah, and then the
Um
fact that the robot doll's purpose was to be these things that needed support from her.
exactly.
It was this codependence, and the fact that yeah, when they lose her, and Kino kind of goes, "I don't need you people. I don't
Uh-huh.
really need robots. Go find your own thing." And they kind of just go, "Okay," and then they kill themselves.
Well, sort of. But
Oh,
this is when we learn our purpose is to help people. That is what we're here for. And so if we do not have anybody that we need to help, we do not have a purpose, and therefore we do not need to live.
mm.
Um,
I
that
think it
that's
also it poses the thing of like kind of like just I feel like the robots they're wrong in that situation,
uh-huh. Well,
and I think it's like the robots should have tried and found like their own
well,
purpose,
and interestingly, that raises the question of is um is your purpose what is given to you by others, or is it what you find yourself? And
Hmm.
is do you only ever have one purpose, or
Can you change
can you
purpose?
change your
Is there more than
purpose?
one
Can you
thing?
find your own
Once you
purpose?
lose your purpose in life, is there more? I think, yeah. Well, I think it's interesting with Kino's character as well, who is
Uh-huh.
a self-motivated character with nobody really around her aside from a
Hermes.
talking motorcycle, you
Yeah.
know?
I
There's nobody there that she has to really look out for. Yeah,
Yep.
she still is slightly codependent on Hermes. Without Hermes, she'd just be walking places and it's taking
Right.
forever. But she's very much a person who would still live by herself and
Oh
would
yeah.
find her motivation isn't helping Hermes. Her motivation is going to different places, and the fact that she is a self-motivated person compared to this family who, yeah, this family of robots that's can't find any motivation without others, can't find any purpose without others. Yeah, I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, well so
Yeah.
they did talk about Hermes's purpose and her purpose in forming a pact with Hermes. So
Mhm.
Hermes's purpose was speed. Um and forming a pact with Hermes was giving balance. They covered that in episode 4, I think.
Yeah.
Which was just really cool.
But I don't think that's kind of the Kino's whole purpose in
No,
life.
it's
Kino
not.
has
And
more
it's
than one
like,
objective. Hermes has more than that going
well,
on.
I guess
There's
does Kino have a purpose, or is Kino looking for a purpose? I think
mm,
that's kind of the premise of the show is
yeah,
we
is,
don't
is
know.
Kino. But I think it's also the idea of maybe Kino's purpose could just be to keep going around.
Yeah,
Maybe Kino hasn't fully realized that what Kino truly wants isn't to ever settle down. Or does Kino want to settle down? Does she
exactly.
believe that she was finding a place for herself, or does she believe that all she wants is to just travel?
Yeah.
I
Um,
think, yeah, there's
it's I don't know. It's such a fascinating show. It's
a,
really
a
thought
lot that
provoking.
remains unanswered about Kino
Um,
as well.
yeah, and I recommend watching it if you haven't already, and
Yeah,
if you haven't been fully spoiled by all of this, which maybe if so, I apologize. But check it out.
it's still worth
We
watching.
didn't cover everything, and I think honestly, I think forming your own opinions about it would be really valuable too.
No, I think
Um,
it's definitely a show worth watching. We've explained it, but I think it's
it's so deep.
you
These
you
are
can have you
just
can
our
have
perspectives.
somebody explain an entire movie to you as there's still value in watching it. And I think for this even more so.
Oh
It's
yeah,
really well directed. And the soundtrack is really beautiful, and the voice acting, everything that went into it is nice, and it's definitely worth a watch.
it all meshes so well. It all meshes so well. Um,
Is that all you have to say?
I
Because
think
I think
that's
that's
all
all I
we
have.
have to say. If you'd like to not have us spoil a show for next time we record, please consider let's see, what are we doing for our next show? It's
That fully cool, I think.
yeah, that I don't know.
FLCL,
FLCL.
the
Please
Studio Gainax classic.
try watching that. We record every other week. Um
It's a 6 episode OVA. I think it's on. You can find it. You
you
can
can
find it
find it.
places.
But you'll don't be afraid to sail the seas with us. Um, but anyway, thank you so much for joining, everybody.
Yeah.
You can find us on YouTube now at Morning. The show is on the YouTube channel Morningstar Productions. Please consider checking it out. Maybe subscribe there. Be much appreciated. Give us a watch. Give us a like. Um, and anyway, thank you so much for joining. And hopefully see y'all next time.
All right. Yeah. See ya.
Alrighty. Bye y'all. At twitch.tv/sleeplessbee every other Friday. Episodes are available on YouTube at Morningstar Productions, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining us.